Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, friends. Today's docket deals with episode 14 of the third and final season of Star Trek the Original Series. This one's entitled Whom Gods Destroy. Good title. Friends, before we get into it, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that like button, smash that subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. It greatly helps out a small channel and it allows me to alert you next time we go live. And of course, if there's anything that we do, the original series included, that you would like earlier in its full-length format, the link to our Patreon is in the description. But my dear friends, all that is then and this is now, and now it's time to once again board the NCC 1701, that beauty, and journey with Jim Kirk and Spock and all of our other friends as we watch Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 14, Whom Gods Destroy. Prepare to engage maximum warp reaction. And away we go! Yeah, beauty, just cruising.
The Federation maintains an asylum for the few remaining incorrigible, criminally insane of the galaxy. We are bringing a revolutionary new medicine to
What?
which the Federation hopes to eliminate mental illness for all time.
Dear God, this is weighty.
It's been too long since I've had company, Jim. The force field's back in place now.
This is the actor from Gremlins. He's the one that had the Mogwai, right?
Garth of Izar, the former Starship Fleet captain.
When I was a cadet at the Academy, his exploits were required reading. He was one of my heroes.
Cool set. We've seen this the peace thing. Oh shit, where would we see that before? The hand holding the peace, the dove.
I can't tell you in front of him.
You're afraid to talk in front of Governor Corey?
He isn't really Governor Corey at all. That's just it.
She's been saying that for days now. Our medical staff can't figure out why.
Or... oh, an Andorian. Tellarite?
Corey?
Yes, Jim. I'm Corey. He tricked you.
All right, well, we're going to punch him now.
You said you wanted to see me, Captain. Well, here I am.
Ruh-roh. Jim's going to tell us about the final frontier. I like that. I like that open was really good. Whom gods destroy. We'll see now. I've been thrown ever since I got the one ambassador's name wrong in Elan of Troyes. So Governor, was it Donald Corey? I think it was Donald. And Governor Corey, I think I said in there, was I'm pretty sure he's the actor that they visit in Gremlins. The father does, and basically steals Gizmo, the Mogwai. Oh, they already took Spock out. A lot of people. Herb Wallerstein. Okay, directed by
Garth, you have to make him suffer like that.
You will address me
Garth.
by my proper title, Kirk.
Captain.
Said Captain Garth.
I am Lord Garth, formerly of Izar, and I lead the future masters of the universe.
I'm sorry.
He-Man?
Listen to me.
Oh, our beloved governor has decided to address us, and we have not given him our permission to speak.
Are you so afraid of him that you must keep him pinned?
Ah, little reverse psychology.
I'm afraid of no one. You're all powerless against me.
That's really not true. You're still on a poison planet with no way off.
And it's time I took command of the Enterprise. You will help me, of course.
Nah.
My crew mutinied. The first use I will make of the Enterprise is to hunt them down and punish them for that.
He can alter his
But
appearance.
they won't.
They'll see you.
See, Captain, there's a helpful technique I've mastered.
I can't tell if she's supposed to be Orion. Or Orion, or not.
There is no help for any of us if that madman is in command of the Enterprise. He boasts that he's created the most powerful explosive in the universe.
Really?
The people of Antos taught him the techniques of cellular metamorphosis to restore the destroyed parts of his body.
To restore the destroyed parts of his body.
He was such a genius. What a waste.
Well, now he's a genius that's doing this shit.
Beam me aboard.
Aye, sir. Queen to Queen's level 3.
I said beam me aboard.
I said Queen to Queen's level 3.
We have no time for chess problems. Beam me aboard.
Doesn't know the code. You just showed your ass, Garth. Something went flying off of his outfit right there to his left. Our left, his right. He's very balanced.
Why didn't he give me the countersign?
Something's wrong.
Using the chess problem was the captain's own suggestion. He couldn't have forgotten it.
We should have been doing this shit from the cage.
Mr. Sulu,
Where has Chekhov been, too?
what do your sensors show?
We can't beam anybody down, sir. The force field on the planet is in full operation, and all forms of transport into the Asylum Dome are blocked off.
We are going to take the Enterprise. Do you hear me?
Whatever you say, Lord.
I have to shatter every bone in Captain Kirk's body.
Have you met Jim Kirk? He is not giving you his ship.
Why can't I blow off just one of his ears?
Stop that, Marta.
Dear God.
The governor's fasting.
In that case, we must decline with thanks.
Captain,
Don't be a fool, Jim. Go along with him.
good advice, Governor.
I like the governor, I like the actor, and I like the character. Great. Now, there's 15 total inmates down here, right? So I wonder if he's released them all. I would only guess.
You treacherous thing.
You're jealous.
I am above that sort of thing. The captain is annoyed by your tensions, that's all.
I'm guessing she is Orion. I mean, she's green, so she looked gray before. Ish, grayish.
I may have you beaten to death.
No, you won't. Because I am the most beautiful woman on this planet.
You're the only woman on this planet, you stupid cow.
What?
I write poetry, and I paint marvelous pictures.
This is like drinking tea with the Mad Hatter.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate.
It was written by an Earthman named Shakespeare a long time ago.
Which does not alter the fact that I wrote it again yesterday. I think it's one of my best poems. Don't you?
Absolutely.
With my bare hands! Actually, Captain, she is a superb dancer.
If this guy kept in that pocket of that last statement he made, she is a superb dancer, instead of like going really manic, I think he'd be doing himself a favor with this. This dance is buying time. If they need to stretch out for, elongate the episode a little bit, dropping in a minute's worth of dancing will do it.
On what precisely is our friendship to be based?
Well, upon the firmest of foundations, Mr. Spock.
Really?
You, Captain, are second only to me
boy.
as the finest military commander in the galaxy.
It's very flattering.
It's very flattering. Thank you.
Tried to destroy Antos 4. Why?
Well, I could say because they were actively hostile to the Federation.
Would be untrue.
Agreed.
Then why?
And in my gratitude, I offered them the galaxy. They rejected me, and I condemned them to death.
How could you, a Starship fleet captain...
A fleet captain?
I had risen above this decadent weakness, which still has you in its command, by the way, Captain.
I wonder if that process that they did to heal him did something to him.
Gentlemen, you have eyes, but you cannot see.
Was he? I'm very curious about that. I wonder if he was like sane before that, and then that would explain it.
And you were our greatest warrior. I studied your victory at Axanar when I was a cadet. In fact, it still required reading at the academy.
As well it should be.
For now.
A dream that became a reality and spread throughout the stars. A dream that made Mr. Spock and me brothers.
Captain Kirk speaks somewhat figuratively and with undue emotion. However, what he says is logical, and I do, in fact, agree with it.
Oh, that makes the episode for me. I don't care what the rest of this is like.
Captain Kirk is your commanding officer. You are his subordinate. And that is all.
He's my friend.
And solar systems ruled by the elite. We gentlemen are that elite, and we must take what is rightfully ours from the decadent weaklings that now hold it.
Captain Garth.
Lord Garth.
Make up your mind, Master of the Universe.
I was betrayed and treated barbarically.
On the contrary, you were treated with justice and with compassion, which you failed to show towards any of your intended victims. One must assume...
Relieve this animal!
Take your shot.
It has a robust, full-bodied flavor, which I'm sure you'll find diverting.
Oh, thank you. I prefer to join Mr. Spock.
And I prefer that you remain here.
Well, one of us is going to be really pissed here in a second.
By the way, I assume you play chess.
Occasionally.
So do I.
Occasionally.
I'm sure you're aware that there are an infinite number of countermoves.
I'm interested in only one.
I can't for the life of me imagine which one.
Tell him what he wants to know, and we'll go away together.
I can't.
Come on, Bill.
Don't beg, Marta. It's degrading. Queen to Queen's level 3, Captain.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Not quite soon.
See, I'd play into his mania. I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, shit.
Yes, I recognize it. It's used for rehabilitation purposes.
Didn't we have something similar in Dagger of the Mind?
Once it was a part of the rehabilitation process, and as such, quite painless.
Now he's gonna put the governor in it.
Queen to Queen's level 3, Captain Kirk.
Why do you keep mentioning that? I have no idea what you mean.
Now, as you can see, he has not been harmed physically. Yet the memory of the exquisite torment remains.
I'm gonna ask you to put your other arm through the sleeve because it's driving me crazy.
Remove our distinguished governor, put Captain Kirk in the chair.
Sure. You might have heard of Jim Kirk's exploits, but you're about to meet Jim Kirk.
No, you mustn't do that.
You really are becoming offensive to me, my dear. Don't make it necessary for me to put you in it.
Kirk's already started to work his seduction bat utility belt tool on Marta, so that should pay dividends around Act 3.
Queen to Queen's level 3, Captain Kirk.
I think it's fuck to you.
You want him, don't you?
Yes.
Badly enough to join him?
The actor playing Marta is doing a better job of instability than Garth is, if that's what they're trying for, which I'm assuming. The ship looks cool, or the planet looks cool. The ship always looks cool.
To break through the asylum dome. Only the ship herself could do that.
Probably killed Jim and Spock.
Doctor, they may already be dead.
If that's the case, then we nuke this place from orbit. Just to be sure.
I told him I'd discover your secret. I lied. I would have told him anything to save you from that torment.
Nice.
This is where I've longed to be.
How do they keep that makeup from getting everywhere?
Garth is my leader.
He will lead you to destruction. He's already destroyed the medicine that could have helped you.
Lie to her, Jim.
Soon your friend Spock will be here, and then...
Spock.
A convincing lie told to a guard who finds me desirable.
I think I know who's really in charge down here. Whoa! Marta, how does this help you?
To have worked out an infallible method for assuring permanent male fidelity. Interesting.
I think that was Elan's dagger, too. Listen, we got to blast our way out of here. There's no putting your hands up, because we'll never get a chance to escape again if we get caught. Well, he is at attention, isn't he? Let's get that gun, phaser. It's my first time watching Star Trek. They're letting him in here so they can hear the code. Shit. Because that's Garth as Spock.
It's the captain.
But then he wouldn't have been able to do the pinch, would he? Never mind.
Queen to Queen's level 3. Repeat. Queen to Queen's level 3.
Damn it. This is a good play. It's a good play, Garth.
For the proper reply, Captain.
Give the countersign as ordered.
Jim, you figured it out.
Scotty, Mr. Spock will give the countersign.
Nice, Jim. Hell yeah, dude.
Blast away, Captain. Can. You think I'm fool enough to give you a charged phaser?
Oh, for fuck's sake. That was a good play. That was a good play. I'm like, how did he know the pinch then? It's because Marta played along.
Fleet Captain. That's an honorable title.
And I was the greatest of them all, wasn't I?
Until you sullied it.
We're the finest student at the Academy. The finest starship captain. You were the prototype. The model for the rest of us.
Really?
It was a great responsibility, but one I was proud to bear.
There we go.
You bore it well.
I love it when actors play off of each other.
I want you to find what you once had. I want you to go back to the greatness that you've lost, Captain Garth.
I am Lord Garth.
That was a good exchange.
All the others before me have failed.
Kneel before Garth.
Lee Kwan, Crotus, all of them are dust.
Khan? Oh, perfect place for that.
Welcome back, Captain Kirk. I'm glad you could make it for the coronation.
Coronation.
Yes.
You reminded me that I haven't been coronated yet.
Perhaps you'd like a larger role in the ceremony. You could
can't.
serve as human sacrifice, for example.
Okay.
That would make you our heir apparent. Heir apparent, I believe, is the proper role for you. Besides, we have other candidates for our human sacrifice. Who knows? We're ready.
That was better.
Therefore, we hereby proclaim that I am Lord Garth, Master of the Universe.
Looking good.
And we further designate Captain James Kirk of the Starship Enterprise to be our heir apparent.
Ah, so if something happens to you, I'm in charge? Thank you for that ill-advised caveat. Let me walk the yellow carpet here. Now what?
Put him in that chair right here. I've arranged a small entertainment. I wouldn't want him to miss any of it.
He put Spock outside. That's why the thing's closed.
This is an explosive. The most powerful one in history.
Let's throw it around.
The resulting explosion would vaporize this planet. Now do you see why it is ridiculous for you to resist me, Captain?
You have a shampoo bottle that you're saying is going to blow up everything? Okay.
I've arranged.
I knew it.
Now it is true that she is deadly as a poisonous serpent, but she is also a beautiful woman, and you have held her in your arms, Captain.
He's going to throw Marta out there?
I will help her now.
I don't believe anything this guy's doing.
Is the force field in place, Mr. Sulu?
Yes, sir, solidly.
Life continues to exist on the planet.
Gotta break through it somehow.
Ahora's over at Science.
Cut through a section of the force field at its weakest point. Where did you say that was located, Mr. Sulu?
On the far side of the planet, Mr. Scott.
Let's do this.
Come to course 14, Mach 6E.
God, when she's running on dark side of the planet, she looks so beautiful.
Here. How are your nerves, Kirk?
Better than yours, dude.
Your friend Spock is a logical man. A very logical man.
Put your right arm into the right sleeve, and we can negotiate. Spock, get ready. Oh, they're segmented force field. Soon, if you get out of your room, see the one in the archway there is gonna... A double? A double? A double? Dude. As soon as he gets outside... Hell yeah, baby! Double pinch. Double kill. Perfectly positioned. He's like...
Your Vulcan friend is a very ingenious fellow.
This could be most amusing.
Are you kidding me? He's gonna tell who's who in a second.
Can't you tell I'm your captain?
Queen to Queen's level 3.
I won't answer that. That's exactly what he wants to know. Very clever. What are you doing?
Arranging to beam down a security team.
I'm sure nobody can...
Must at this moment be expending a great deal of energy to maintain the image of Captain Kirk. That energy level cannot be maintained indefinitely.
That's an interesting shot. Seemed kind of ill set. Stun them both, Spock. Stun them both. Jim can take it. Spock? Pinch them both. You know the code. What are we doing here?
Right, Spock, you must shoot. But you must shoot both of us. It's the only way to ensure the safety of the Enterprise.
Boom. That's all it takes.
Captain Kirk, I presume.
Oh, come on, Spock. You knew that from when you walked in the room. This was Spock's entertainment for the year.
Queen to Queen's level 3.
Queen to King's level 1.
Reversal of arterial and brain damage should begin almost immediately.
This shot should make him realize he's wearing 2 different colored boots from now on. It's a start.
Yes, sir, the Enterprise. I'm the captain.
Nice to meet you.
Can I help you?
No, Captain. The medicine seems to be taking effect. I can manage. It's very encouraging.
Nice.
Should I know you, sir?
No. Captain.
Nice.
Mr. Spock,
Yes, Captain.
tell me something. Why was it so impossible to tell the difference between us?
I knew who you were.
The interval of uncertainty was actually fairly brief, Captain. It only seemed long to you. I was waiting for a victor in the hand-to-hand struggle, which I assumed would be Captain Garth.
Presume you let yourself be hit on the head is not exactly a method King Solomon would have approved. Mr. Scott, ready to beam up.
All right, everybody, we just got done watching the 14th episode of the 3rd and final season of Star Trek, the original series, entitled Whom Gods Destroy. And the only thing left to do is talk about it. All right, everybody, we just got done watching Whom Gods Destroy, the 14th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek, the original series. I'm quickly becoming, not quickly, it's taken me 14 episodes. I think that a lot of you have made comments in, as each of these have gone up, to the, paraphrasing, obviously, all of you that says, season 3 gets a bit of a bad rap. And of course, I'm extrapolating like everything that you all have told me, but it sounds like, it has more of the kind of lesser episodes, which, I completely agree with that. But at the same time, I don't think the quality of episodes on average might be as bad as initially I was going to think it was going to be. You know what I mean? I think the lead off of Spock's brain does not do season 3 any favors. But at the same time, I thought this was a pretty decent episode. It wasn't, didn't blow my mind, or it wasn't the greatest one that I've seen or anything like that. But at the same time, it had moments. I think every episode of Star Trek has moments, has really strong, we had an incredible moment between Spock and Kirk. You consider him a brother. And we got to hear Spock's, basically profession of how he feels about Jim. And I'm using the word feel deliberately. I just think that was an incredibly important moment, And the thing with all of that is that, to have Spock be able to say that, it's something that we couldn't have had, I don't think. We couldn't have had that admission or that type of growth in seasons 1 or 2. I think we really needed to have it now. It's a great time for that. We've had moments where Spock has definitely been, he's my friend, Jim. We've had kind of a bleed through of Spock being able to kind of really start to profess these things. Again, And it's not like he's sitting there, oh, I love Jim, or he's this or he's that. He's stating, what he's saying is right. We are brothers. We're not, you can use the textbook definition, but the way I feel is correct. Or the way that, way he explained it is correct. I love that because, with Spock, I think it's a very, I'm going to speak from personal experience. When I was a kid and I was watching the movies, which was my only, for the original cast, my only experience with them was in Wrath of Khan and then the rest of the original series movies that I've seen once. Wrath of Khan a ton of times, and then the other ones that I've seen once. Now, I've seen, the J.J. Abrams movies, which obviously isn't Nimoy and Shatner, but, as far as Spock and Kirk go, which now that I'm remembering them, I'm not really sure how well that works. And then, of course, just things that have occurred in, like, movies, like Generations, I guess. I don't really have a whole lot of Spock and Kirk, though, except from those original movies. And I think that this is so warranted and so important for the progression of their friendship to have these things in play right now and to have Leonard Nimoy really have had time to do this. I'm going to be very honest with you. When I was a kid and I was watching Star Trek for the first time, I really, really liked Spock, but I didn't love Spock. Jim was my guy. I loved Jim. I thought that, Shatner did a great job with him. I always loved him on the bridge, commanding during Wrath of Khan. Thought he was absolutely fantastic. And to me, when I was a kid, Spock was like his kind of like his partner. You know what I mean? It wasn't a standalone character. It was almost like a Batman and Robin type of thing. Kirk and Spock. I have no idea that dynamic. I mean, obviously viewed through the eyes of a kid, I had to put a title or put a name on Spock. What is Spock? Spock's Jim's friend, his partner, it's his, best buddy, blah, blah, blah. But that was a hollow definition as a kid, and obviously I didn't recognize that. And, with the events of Wrath of Khan, I believe that to be reinforced in those moments. However, now in retrospect, whenever I've seen their adventures, for the most part, I've still got, a couple more here in season 3, but now there is so much weight applied to that relationship that I couldn't read as a kid because I didn't understand Spock. I didn't understand that, Spock couldn't be like, Jim, I love Jim. Jim's my guy. He's the best. I'd die for him. I would, he's my best friend. I couldn't do anything without him. He's been there whenever I've been upset. That's not Spock. None of those statements work for Spock. You have to experience, at least me, I had to. I mean, here we are decades later. I had to experience what Nimoy did with Spock to bring Spock to this point, to kind of not drag him, but really kind of open him up as much as he would allow a Vulcan to be opened up, to really start to understand that dynamic. Spock, for however you define it, and obviously the emotion of love doesn't translate for the Vulcans. For Spock, it's almost a necessity that he be with Jim. You could say that that's love or that's whatever. But again, I just think that it's like, that's his definition of friendship. He's my guy. Jim is of all the people I've met in this universe, his company is the one that I find the least upset, whatever Spock would come up with. It's like he found his counterpart, somebody. He never got along with the kids on Vulcan. He never got along. We never really saw Spock fit in. He's a creature of two worlds, of humanity and of the Vulcans. But by God, it just so happened that James T. Kirk was his guy, and he found him. And that expression, "we're brothers," what he said is correct. Is for any other creature, any other race, any other being would have been a shout like, "I absolutely love this guy. You touch him, I'm going to effing kill you." I love that moment. I didn't mean to turn this into a Spock and Kirk moment, but the rest of the episode I thought was solid. And again, if you're going to give me a moment like that, be very honest with you, I don't care what you put around it. If the story's at least decent, you're going to give me a moment like that, I'm definitely going to say I enjoyed the episode, because those nuggets are few and far between. And that was probably the most profound one that I can personally think of from the original series, of Spock's admission for his air quote, hard air quote, feelings about Jim, and it was fantastic. I mean, it gave me chills. It was everything that I want in that relationship. Now, for everybody else that was, I thought the actor that played Garth struggled at the beginning, which was understandable. You're struggling with, how do I depict mental illness? How do I make it believable? How do I make it, and I think for a moment there was sort of like a Lewis Carroll, I mentioned like being around the Mad Hatter, where it's just, a complete irrational switch to this. I scream about this, you're a fool, all these things. And then when he settled in, and when he and Bill Shatner had a chance to really kind of ping pong between each other, Bill calmed it down. Bill took it real low, where they were just whispering and sharing, remember who you were before the accident, remember who you were. And you could see the actor opposite of Bill really drinking in that kind of subdued energy. I love shit like that. And he brought his performance down to match. And I think in that moment, and then he ramped it back up when he got, irritated again. But in that quiet moment of exchange, there was a menace to Garth that I think would have been better served if he had used that the entire time. Could you have had moments of kind of that irrational outburst? Sure. Not to the extent that it was used, because again, I think it was too over the top. It got to be a little comical. And I'm being super nitpicky. Obviously you're dealing with an actor who's basically thrown pages and said, go, and of course he's going to work through it. And he did. He really worked through it towards the middle. And then at the end, do we know each other? Oh, that was great. That taught me right there at the end, whenever that exchange, and he shook his hand and, should we know each other? And that in and of itself proves that guy's a great actor. Really, really good subtle movements, and really, really good, a lot of kind of bleed through into the actual line delivery. I thought Marta was really good. I thought that she was, and I thought that the governor did a really good job for what was asked of him, for what was asked of all of them, I might add. And, we had a good subterfuge in there as Garth coming in as Spock. I didn't pick up on that shit until we got to the actual control room. And I love that they let Jim pick up on that too. Jim was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Bullshit. But again, I love, and see, knowing what happens in Wrath of Khan, certain elements, setting up this, chess move to be answered by a chess move, puts into, this is the first time we've actually had, hey, we've got our own language, and Spock and Scotty and Kirk, and they've got our own language here, and it's the language of the Enterprise. It's not, the Enterprise is a country unto itself, and the linguistics, the language that is used in here, no one else understands. And I love that. It's we can talk amongst ourselves here. We know exactly what we need to do and we need to get done. And they're establishing early that especially these three, have an idea of how they want to progress, how the management of the Enterprise, especially when it comes down to highly charged situations, they're beginning to develop almost a unspoken thing now. And I love that. But friends, there's a ton going on in this episode, and the only real way to figure out exactly what went on behind the scenes, exactly where Garth came from, stage trained, I'm going to guess that there's definitely some stage experience in Garth's back history. But we need to know these things. We have to. It's all part of the process. It's part of our journey to find out everything that went into each of these episodes, because they're not making any more of them. And the more that we can learn, the closer we become to this incredible crew. So friends, join me when I ask for help as we say, General? Greetings and salutations, my friends. 'Tis I, leader of men, lover of women, and best friend to Jim Kirk, General Trelane, retired. Friends, this is where, after having watched and reacted to an original series episode of Star Trek, I like to dig a little bit deeper and find out what went on behind the cameras. Because as we've often said, the story behind the cameras of the original series sometimes is just as juicy, if not juicier, than the story in front of the cameras. But to keep myself from wandering off into the weeds for 3 hours, I've given myself 5 categories to explore. The first of which, writer and director. who were they? The second, guest stars, did we have any? The third, of the core cast or the big eight, who was present? The fourth and juiciest of the categories, the production notes, what went on behind the cameras. And last but certainly not least, category 5, a memorable quote from this episode. Let's get started. All right, friends, and for our very first category for this episode, writer and director, who were they? Well, we had co-writers on this one, Lee Irwin and Jerry Soule. And for our director, we did have a returning director from the Tholian Web, as we had Herb Wallerstein arrive as the credited director on this episode. It's season 3, everybody. Things aren't really what they think they are. I will say this, Judd Taylor is also directed elements of this episode, but we'll get to that down in production notes. It's always a journey, my friends. Let's continue. And now, everyone, for our second category, guest stars, did we have any? We did indeed in this one, as we had Steve Einott as Garth, Yvonne Craig as Marta, and Kai Luke as Governor Corey. Again, I did my heart well to see. I believe his character's name in Gremlins was Mr. Wing, something like that, but I saw him in his voice. He has a really interesting cadence to his voice. As soon as I heard him speak, I was like, oh, that's the guy from Gremlins. Interesting stuff, friends. Let's move on. And now for our third category, of the core cast or the Big Eight, who was present in this episode. Well, to recap, the Big Eight consists of Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Sulu, Scotty, Uhura, and also Chekhov and Chapel. The last two, Chekhov and Chapel, unfortunately did not make an appearance. Let's move on. And now, friends, for our fourth and juiciest category, the production notes of this episode. What went on behind the cameras? Let's get started. And now, friends, for our first production note. Again, this is an interesting and kind of a sad one, in that this is the last episode that Robert Justman acted as producer for. Now, Justman had been in some capacity a part of the original series since The Cage, and he eventually left for reasons that were basically, he wasn't let go. He opted to cut out. He broke his own contract. He didn't like the idea that he wasn't named as the showrunner. He didn't like the idea that the morale was so low, that the studio was basically treating them poorly. He wanted out. And to the point where he was so upset with Paramount that he didn't set foot on that studio lot until 20 years later, when he came back to work on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Let's move on. And now for our second production note, my friends, and this harkens back to our very first category with writer and director. I said that Judd Taylor has a non-credited directorial role in this one, and that's because Judd Taylor ran over by a day in his direction of Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Now, because he ran over and because they wanted to basically make sure that Herb Wallerstein wasn't kind of, the beneficiary of a truncated schedule, they made Judd Taylor continue with his day by filming all of the bridge scenes from this episode. So whenever you see a bridge scene, anything that consists aboard the Enterprise in this episode was directed by Judd Taylor, as he was kind of asked to help Wallerstein catch up for Judd Taylor falling behind. Interesting. Let's move on. And now, my friends, of course, I noticed this, but my Swiss cheese brain couldn't pull it up. Our third production note is this. The smock or the scrubs with the hand holding the dove that Governor Corey was wearing was, in fact, the same set of, I'm not sure if it's the exact same set of scrubs and smock, but that symbol was apparent during Dagger of the Mind. Whenever we got to see anybody that was working down in the station had something similar on their smocks. I knew I had seen that somewhere, but Swiss cheese. Let's move on. All right, friends, and for our fourth production note, this one is very interesting to me because the one thing that we have seen several instances of in Star Trek, the original series, is we've had a huge kind of casting net that they've thrown out. They've brought in people from all walks. I mean, we had a lawyer at one point, an attorney come in. The casting department had never slouched. They always found really good people to bring in. And if the need arose where they had to have somebody quick, they didn't have a problem with bringing somebody back in an entirely different role. That's why I find this next production note a little confusing to me. Steve Einott, I'm sure I'm pronouncing his last name wrong, who played Garth, as written in the script, Garth is supposed to be 10 to 15 years older than Kirk, because when Kirk refers to, the required reading at the academy and he studied him and he was a hero of his, it has to be, conceptually correct as far as the chronology. You have to have somebody of elevated age that made a name for themselves to the point where they are required reading. So it would have to, there has to be some drag and lead time there for them to get out, make a name for themselves and have that matriculate all the way back down to an institution of higher learning where Kirk could have studied Garth. So the interesting part about that to me is, instead of opting to cast somebody that was the 10 to 15 or more years older than Bill Shatner, Steve Einott is actually 3 years younger. And so whenever they brought him in, they tried to put gray in his hair and everything like that. But the problem being is that while to me, it didn't break the suspension of disbelief or anything, I just find it weird now that they had all of these people they could have pulled from the past, that they had used before, brought them in, and they didn't. Instead, they went with somebody who, by the very script's definition, was not correct for this role. Interesting. It's the first little bit of, with a history in casting, it's the first little bit of casting that I kind of raise my eyes at, like my eyebrows, and be like, you didn't really have to do this, but who knows, maybe they did. Let's move on. All right, everybody, and for our fifth and final production note, this one basically deals with Leonard Nimoy's dislike of this episode. He was very critical of this episode, specifically because he thought that it basically did the character of Spock dirty, in that Spock was unable to differentiate between Kirk and clone Kirk. Like Nimoy and myself, I agree that as soon as Spock was even in the same, space, that's Jim. There's no way that someone as perceptive as Spock would need to go through like a test to figure this stuff out. And so Nimoy was so pissed about it that he wrote several letters, one of which he actually included in his book. It's a portion of it in his book, I'm Not Spock, that just basically, as a kind of a reference to say, hey, I was really pissed about this, and still am from the excerpt that I read. So, this was definitely not one of Leonard Nimoy's favorites. And to kind of further expand on that, whenever I was doing my research, this is one of those events that really kind of we're adding a lot of straws to the camel's back here. People were getting very upset with the way that their characters were being portrayed, the way they, as actors, were being treated on set, the way that the studio was treating the show in general. So all of this was starting to compound, and it was starting to reach a boiling point, unfortunately. Friends, let's move on. And now, my friends, for our fifth and final category, a memorable quote from this episode. So I thought I'd keep this short and sweet because, one, I like the quote, and two, I think it shows a tremendous amount about Jim Kirk. And at the very end of the episode, after Garth had received his treatment for his, maniacal madness and seemingly seemed cured, but he couldn't remember anything, he looks up at Jim Kirk and he says, "Should I know you, sir?" And Jim looks down at him and says, "No, Captain." And I thought that adding of the honorific showed us so much about Jim Kirk. He knew what Garth had been through. He knew it had been bad. And he made sure to remind himself, Jim, and Garth that he was, in fact, a Starfleet captain. Thus ends another installment of Q&A. Until such time as you and I get to play with our dear friend Jim again, behave yourselves.